Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion, and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Craig S., Edward S., Nick W., Luke A., and Paul M. We have a new guest on the program today. Mr. David Prins is with us. Dave is the president and CEO of CopperEx Resources, a copper-focused exploration company with early-stage projects in northern Chile, including the Exploradora Norte Project. CopperEx also has a project in southern Peru as well. The company is part of the Discovery Group of companies. CopperEx is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol CUEX. Mr. Prins, welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions.
Yes, good morning, Andrew, and good morning, listeners. Nice to be on the show.
Absolutely, Dave. It's great to have you on. Really excited to discuss CopperEx, and it's a company that we've been aware of for a number of months, and finally good to get you on the program and have you talk a little bit about the company and, of course, introduce us to the company. And I do want to get to that introduction stuff in a moment, Dave, but I wanted to start off here with recent maiden exploration results at the Exploradora Norte Project, Franja del Oro area. Talk about the results first. We want to hear about that.
Okay, thanks. That's a great starting point, Andrew. So we've held the Exploradora property for 3 years now, done a lot of exploration, and although we are a copper focused company, we also state we have exposure to gold. So really, what this Franja del Oro area is, it's a surface gold target, which is a lot more meaningful for us as a startup company to gain traction and market capitalization to then go out and step out into a porphyry, which means other things. So we've done a lot of work on the Franja del Oro target. We've got an area there of 15 kilometres by 3 kilometres, which we call Franja del Oro, which is broken down into two subsectors right now, targets which we've just drilled, being ADLP, Agua de la Piedra, I'll refer to it as ADLP in future, and Sorpresa. I must state, Sorpresa has not been previously drilled. However, there is historical results as per our company presentation on ADLP. So we're very excited about this. We tested on the ADLP target a length of 850 metres with the drill holes centred, 5 drill holes there, about 150 metres apart average right away along the length. And on our primary hole there, we achieved 114 metres of 0.95 gram gold from 4 metres on ARC02, which we're very excited about. And that included 30 metres at 1.63 grams. On another hole on the ADLP target, we achieved 240 metres of 0.31 gram gold from surface. So that's another very exciting result. So that's basically proven up mineralisation along strike, along that 850 metre area there. We do believe we have a lot of geological work done along this trend showing mineralisation along more than 7 kilometres of it. So we've got a lot of work to do, but there's huge upside on this target. Then on the Sorpresa target, which is some 3 kilometres to the east, a different structure within the system, on the drill hole SRC01, we obtained 58 metres at 0.74 grams, backing up our surface trench result of 42.4 metres at 0.98 grams, including 22 metres at 1.4 grams. On a hole further to the south, SRC02, 85 metres at 0.42 grams, which backed up our surface trench result of 20.9 metres. So those are basically the principal results out there. We also intercepted indications of porphyry occurrences distal to the ADLP target, which we're very, very excited about. I know BHP drilled there years ago, didn't test 2 drill holes on the ADLP target where we're focusing. Didn't test for gold. We went back and tested the pulps, came up with some results, and in our drill holes, in between their drill holes, we've come up with evidence of porphyry in the chips. So very excited about that, which provides future upside as well. So that's basically the highlights of the results there. So in principle, we've got 2 independent structures out there. One of them never drilled, where we've got mineralisation over 1.2 kilometres and 850 metres, and excited about extending that, and the next program focusing on a little bit infill drilling and stepping out as well.
Appreciate that. And I think overall, for maiden program, this is a pretty good result in my take here. And of course, in this region, you can't help but yourself but get into gold, of course, even while you're looking for copper. And of course, the deposits often come together with both, so the audience understands that. Let's talk a little bit about the next plans. You started to talk a little bit about that, but what would be the plans here on follow-up based on these results? Because obviously you've got some geologists whispering in your ear here. There's some analysis work that needs to be done to define next targets, but talk about what the next plans would be on follow-up here, Dave, and then also what you think the timing of that follow-up would be.
So we've done a lot of work, as I mentioned, on this area. And while the excavator was up there during the recent drill program, we've actually started the exploration or advancing upon the exploration works we'd already done adjacent to within the areas in Suppressor and ADLP. So we're actually working on a program now. We're currently planning to get the exploration team back up there to do around about a 2 to 3 week program. They should be heading up this Friday, Saturday. Thereafter, we'll finalise a drill program, go out for contracting, and hopefully, I hope we're drilling in another 4 months or so. And we need to do a little bit more work to get to that, but that's what we're looking at right now. So I'd say 4 months we'll be drilling again if things go to plan. So we'll just be focusing on the gold target there. I'd like to get advance what we know there now on the ADLP and suppressor targets. Hopefully bring in more attractive results, and then in the future at some time after subsequent programs, I won't state which one, then we can step out into our other targets, which we'll mention a little later on.
Dave, thank you for that. That's good stuff. And of course, that would be, I think, the most logical thing to do here, given the company is quite young and very early stage here. Let's go back to the introduction with first-time guests on the program. We'd like to have you cover off your background and experience in the junior natural resource markets.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm actually Australian. I've worked for Placer Dome for directly and indirectly for 16 years between Papua New Guinea, Chile, other parts of the world. Then I started my own consulting company doing a lot of work for the majors down in Chile, covering off on from advanced exploration, technical studies, PEAs, feasibilities, mine construction and mine building. Thereafter, I was, and the most probably notable thing on my resume, was project director at Prins Resources, where I picked up the A. Schultz Award for the contribution of mining to British Columbia in 2017 as co-recipient. And thereafter, that's where I obviously met Robert Quartermain, who's on the technical committee with CopperEx, and also an investor, not a large investor, but has invested into CopperEx. And thereafter, I am the principal founder of CopperEx. So I came down back to Chile from Canada. The idea of setting up a company, an exploration company with highly prospective properties, which we've done. As per John Robbins' comments of recent, and I quote, located in the heart of Chile, the Chile copper belt, the CopperEx property portfolio gives our shareholders exposure to some of the best copper gold exploration plays I have seen in many years. So, that just provides some substance around the property package. We've got some 44,000 hectares, just short of that. So I pulled this package together. I'm the largest single shareholder still, I believe, and have invested a significant amount of money pulling this thing together of my own cash. So I think that's a good thing that investors can see as a president, CEO and principal founder with a large shareholding position, probably one of the largest in these types of companies. So that's pretty much it at a high level, Andrew. I think I've covered your question.
Thank you for that, Dave. I want to ask about your thoughts here about sentiment for the juniors and, of course, gold and copper prices, obviously, which are the focus metals for this company. What are your thoughts on the market at this point, and of course that underlying sentiment for the junior companies in the category that we're talking about here with CopperEx?
Well, I think the market's starting, obviously, because of the metal prices. I think the market's starting to pick up. I haven't seen a huge uptick in the junior market sector yet, but I think you've seen it in the copper producers. I think copper's got a huge element in its price out there to come in the coming years because of the oil electrification, electric vehicles, etc., and resources and reserves declining worldwide as well as grade. So I just think it's the world's next black oil of years ago, right? So I think it's great. And I'd also like to point out that, the interception of CopperEx in, at the start of 2021, we've raised $15 million to the end of last year Canadian as a private company. So it was pretty tough, but it speaks volumes to the team and the quality of our portfolio, and really it set the scene for right now. So I'm highly hopeful. I think markets will turn. They are turning. We've still got significant investment into the CopperEx story, and we've got several CAs signed with majors out there, some who are very interested in a few of our property portfolio, and specifically one or two of those properties. So I'll leave it at that. And obviously that's the end goal for us at the end of the day, I would assume.
Why don't we get into the background, Dave, of CopperEx and how the company formed up? Tell us a little bit about the background here, why you took the job, and of course, we've got a bit of an overview of the company already, but talk about those couple things, and then we'll get into capital structure in a moment.
Yes, Andrew, I didn't really take the job, I guess, as being principal founder and pulling it all together. I elected to do it and forced myself into it, if I may. But no, it's been a lot of hard work. We have survived. So, when I left Prins Resources the end of 2020, I basically went out, looking for properties in Chile and Peru, focused on gold and copper, highly prospective, as I previously mentioned. And it took me about 6 months of my own time and money to pull it all together. And we've signed the first deal February 1st or 2nd, 2021 it was. So then I pulled in the other two properties, which was Exploradora Norte, a flagship property. And I'll talk a little bit about that, the details of it further on. And I pulled in two other properties via friends who had other properties in one in northern Chile, Kiribati, and then one in southern central Peru. So based on that, I went out and got private financing together, summing up the $15 million I've talked about, and we've done an extensive amount of exploration work over the Exploradora, principally over the Exploradora Norte property in the 3 years. 104 kilometres of geophysics. We're probably around about 9,000 geochemical samples, Worldview 3 and ASTA data out there. A fair bit of mag work out there. We've probably done 15, 16 kilometres of trenching, a lot of test pits, and recently the 1,279 metres of drilling. There's other works out there, but that's a highlight. So a lot of work. The majors that have come in, they've commented to us and to our delight. They can't believe the amount, quality, and calibre of work that we've done in the short time frame we've been there on that property. But it's a large property, and I didn't just want to go out there and follow up on old drill results. We've done a lot of work out there setting the scene for CopperEx and CopperEx's future, to really drive the value of the property and not just go out there and follow up on other people's results. And that's really a product that's built up into 43 101s on the principal properties that is available on the company's website and filed on CEDAR.
Let's cover off the capital structure here. Why don't you give us the shares outstanding, Dave, the current cash on hand, and how far you see that gets you down the road based on current budget, as well
Okay.
as major shareholders on the roster, of course, including yourself. I mean, you're a major shareholder. We want to hear about your shareholding as well.
So our current share structure, we have 38.72 million shares outstanding, a total of 6.7 million warrants at variable strike prices out there, and 2.91 million options, again at variable strike prices. So very tidy share structure at this stage of a company to get into. And the major shareholders for that, Andrew, as I said, I believe I'm still the largest single shareholder out there as per the last evaluation. The Gotham Group, who was principally owned by Discovery Group members and backers when we did the amalgamation back in August, and then back into the RTO of that on February the 14th, we became a public company on the TSX, have a large position out there. And then there's a stream of others. I would like to mention that we have good diversity in the location, geographical location of our shareholder basis. So we've got good backing from Germany, other parts of Europe, US, Canada, Australia, and a decent portion from South America and principally Chile as well. Regarding cash on hand, as of Monday, we had a little over 2 million Canadian still on hand, which without any further drilling and including a little exploration work should take us through till the end of this year, early January. So we just need to come together and work out what we're going to do for the next drill program, advance that and use existing capital, or go and raise a little bit of money.
With that, Dave, talk about where you are in terms of just percentage basis, or give us what you can as far as numbers on what your shareholding is at this point.
The last number I had at the top of my head, I believe, was I was at 14.04 or around there in order of magnitude. So if I could just say 12 to 14%, I don't track that every day, but that's what I think I'm at. Yeah. On a personal level, to date I've put in, pretty much more than 2 million Canadian of my own cash into this story.
That's perfect. Well, that gives folks the ability to do some rough math and figure out where you stand there. So really appreciate that information. Well, one of the things that you mentioned, Mr. Robbins, earlier, some of the key staff at the company, I think that's important to bring up here as well. So just talk about any key staff that you'd like to bring up and mention.
Yeah, so no, I think that's a good point to follow on with. So, I've discussed myself, and on the board we have Cesar Lopez. Cesar Lopez is one of the greatest property finders and deal makers I know. He's also, I've been associated with him for probably 12, 14 years now, so very reliable on the board. He's a lawyer by trade. Joe Ovsnick, who was president and CEO of CopperEx Resources out there. So, Joe, he's now one of the founders of P2 Gold and president and CEO, director of P2 Gold. And then we have Chase Taylor Robbins, who's John's son. He's also on the board and currently working for Aurzone Gold Corporation, which is ex-Great Bear Royalties. And then Tom Yip, who was also an ex-Pretium director at some point in time and also the CFO for Pretium. So, we built this up a lot around Pretium. On the technical committee, very important, we have Julian Bavin. Julian was exploration director of Rio Tinto for many years out there. Julian's a good friend of mine, and also via Julian, I brought in the Kio Buggy property in northern Chile and the Larica properties out there as well. So, he was instrumental in that, and obviously a very well-respected man in this industry. And then I mentioned Bob Quartermain, who's sitting on the technical committee. And then we have, John Robbins and Jim Peterson, founders of Discovery Group, who are also advisors to us, amongst an array of others out there as well. So that's principally it, Andrew, on the top scale team.
It's good to know, and some of the folks there should be well-known names out there that folks can look into as well, that are at various stages, of course, in their career and have had past successes. And as you know, we always try to look for people that remain hungry, Dave, as well, which we definitely think you are, and we appreciate the thoughts on that and some of the people there that are supporting. I want to come back to your thoughts on the various target areas of Exploradora Norte, that project, and talk about some of the future plans that you guys have with that project, and then we'll jump into the other projects in a moment.
So if I could just give a little, thank you, Andrew, if I could just give a little bit of an introduction in Exploradora Norte itself. So CopperEx has an option agreement in place which expires the 31st of May 2026, so pretty much 2 years still on it. The property we've got a 20,800 hectare package there, highly prospective, multiple magmatic centers, mineralized magmatic centers out there on it. So we've already got 3 drill-ready targets out there on this property, one of which we've already drilled and talked about, which I've elaborated on, which is the Franco de Loro area. It's a massive area, and we've broken it down into subsector targets, Franco de Loro and Sorpresa. There's other multiple parallel structures mineralized in between and further to east and the west of those, but we've yet to do more work to follow up. Very exciting target, and I think this could be a very large potential gold target at the end of the day for some of the majors sniffing around. On the same property, we also have the Palco porphyry target, where we've done an extensive amount of work. It's drill ready in a tourmaline breccia environment. It's on the West Fisher Fault, the property. We're at 3,400 meters elevation, some 4 hours from Copiapó and pretty much 130 kilometers east of Tal Tal. And our neighbor, bordering to the southwest, is Codelco. They border our property, and they've got a resource on that property stated by Codelco, which is not 43-101 compliant, but it's Codelco's, between 180 to 280 million tonnes at 0.4% at a 0.02 cutoff, right? So very interesting indeed, and everyone believes that's underexplored. So our Palco porphyry target is in a northeasterly direction, probably 4 or 5 kilometres from that. Very, very exciting area. So much surface exposure, geological surface exposure on that property. Some great results. Gold in there as well. Great copper results. The breccias are telling us a hell of a lot about it. And with that, the quantities of work I'd previously mentioned, that covers also this Palco porphyry target, whereby we've pretty much mapped and sampled it at 50 by 50 meter centers where we could. So that target has never been drilled. There is a drill pad on it. BHP, when they had this property in the 2007 period, I think it was, put a drill pad on it and never drilled the specific target we're focusing on. Their closest drill hole was about 2.7 kilometres to the north. So it shows it was on their radar screen, but they never drilled it, which is good for us as well. So we've got, I think it's 14 drill pads out there, and in the future, once we get the value of the company up, we'll transition over into that. One thing I'd like to mention, CopperEx, with so many properties and targets, what differentiates us is we do work in a very structured, focused manner, and that's what I bring to the table. We've also got a couple of targets that are drill ready there and other areas that we need to explore. Very, very exciting. All of our properties are royalty free. So the 3 properties we hold, the other 2 we own 100% royalty free. On the Exploradora property, it's also at 3,400 meters, year-round working conditions, very favourable terrain, for mine building and exploration works out. They're not like some of the other areas we see. We're very excited about this property. Then moving to the north, probably 100 kilometres due north of Spence, some 85 kilometres pretty much due north as well of Chuquicamata. We have the Kio Buggy property, which is 5,325 hectares, fully owned, no royalties, no community sovereignty over it. However, the town of Kijal, which we operate out of, is a local community, ethnic community. So, we've got an agreement in place, and they actually use the model for that CopperEx has established with them for the other negotiations. And needless to say, we have a lovely relationship with them. On that property, there's some historic drilling out there with exceptional results on it. If you have a look at the fact they only did, and that was under Julian Bavin, or the previous ownership, which Julian was involved in, and got some very good indicative results. So we've followed up on that and done 3 months work out there. We've got 2 definitive porphyry targets out there. The evidence that we're seeing at surface tells us we have a mineralized porphyry below us, so do the old chips. So we're very excited about that. Once we get our house in order on our flagship property with the option agreement in front of us, we'll be moving ahead at this at some point in time. Again, 100% owned, no royalties, year-round working conditions, 1,800 metres elevation. And then we own 100% the Larica property in central southern Peru, so it's some 80 kilometres southwest of Cusco for an easier reference, around about 4,000 metres elevation. Very exciting property. Initial surface samples there of 7.2, 3% copper at surface, a huge skarn at surface that grows every time we've been up there, which has only been 3, but it's a very interesting area for us as well. So we own that 100%, and obviously that'll be a longer term perspective for us. And obviously in Peru, it's going to be community. So there'll be a lot of work to do there when time and resources permit. So that's pretty much our property portfolio package, Andrew, and the targets within it. So I hope I've answered your question on that one.
Hey, no, thank you very much. And I appreciate you bringing up the community for Peru. It's obviously a concern and an effort that needs to happen from day one. So I really appreciate you punching that out immediately. With respect to Kio Buggy and, of course, La Rica, just given that the focus will be on Exploradora Norte, let's just throw a number here in terms of time, over the next, call it 12, 18 months, is there any plan specifically on Kio Buggy and La Rica, or that'll come down even later?
So, yeah, I'd like to get, depending on the results and the market reaction and whether we can engage a major out here, at some point in time on what we're seeing at Franco del Oro, if we want to do that, or on the other properties. So, that'll turn out in time. But the way I see it, we do 1, maybe 2 more programs on Franco del Oro, and with positive results out there, then we'll step out. So I see Palco as a good target to step out into with a program out there. And Kio Buggy, we could step into that as well, with between 3 and 6, maybe 8 drill holes out there to define, or target into one of those porphyries we've mentioned. And, so that could happen within the next 18 months, maybe a little earlier if things go very well for us. It'll be, result and market driven. And then Larica in Peru, as soon as we start to build up the share price and get the money out there, we can start to, get money at a cheaper dilution rate, let's say, we'd start work on the community, which is not a huge expenditure, but it takes up time. So we're just the human resource side of things. So we'll start to trend into that after we have a little more success out here. And we've already got an array of CAs signed out there. One of the world's largest mining companies has been up to the Exploradora Norte Project 4 times. We've got an array of others that have been up there once or twice with CAs signed. We've had people approach us on Larica, one of the world's largest mining companies, and also in Kio Buggy. So we're following up on these. As you know, the markets have been tough, and some of the largers are redivesting the assets out there. But we do have, I would say, very sincere interest on these properties, and more so on our Franco del Oro target.
That kind of points to some of the obviously location, some of the success over the last few years with maybe, I don't know if I want to call it pure companies, but definitely companies that have already had discovery success in the region, of
Yeah.
course, and then just the overall potential of that project. So I appreciate that. With this, of course, I want to ask just to understand with Keo Buggy and La Rica, given that they're really not the core focus or they're really the non-core projects at this point. Is there any interest, Dave, regarding divestment of these projects, or would there be any interest in joint venture?
Yeah, totally. That's never been written off, and that's the purpose of some of these CAs. And I've been fishing around now that we're getting our name out there public a little more, as well, looking for maybe other juniors or mid tiers to step in as well. So it's definitely on the board out there. We've got a lot of area and targets out there to cover. However, I've explained how if we have to step forward and do it alone, we'll do it. However, we're totally open to bringing on JVs or whatever else into our other properties out there. 100%.
Good to hear that. And then, of course, if there's any potential parties that are listening in on the podcast, we do try to ask that question on occasion on these types of situations. So I appreciate the clarification on that. With respect to listings, Dave, obviously you guys are just getting off the ground here, but any plans to obtain a US OTC listing in the near future?
Andrew, we're working on an OTC listing, and we'll get back to people once we've got a plan around it.
Very well. Back to community. We just touched on that slightly, but I want to come into this a little bit deeper here and get some of your thoughts. Local community government relations, obviously, we're dealing with first and foremost the Chile communities and, of course, government. So we can maybe just talk about that to start here. Talk about those overall efforts and the work you're doing on this front to work closely with the local community on the importance of mining and the benefits, of course, that come with that, as well as government relationships to ensure they work with the company in the future if, of course, projects advance to something that becomes economical to develop in the future. Just give us your thoughts on that, how you approach that, Dave.
Okay, well, as I mentioned, the Exploradora Norte property has no community sovereignty around it, so we don't need community access agreements onto that, and which is a huge favourable plus for investors coming into a company, as well as that we have the fact that we have no royalties on our property. It's year-round working elevation, etc. So, moving forward, Andrew, if we get far enough down the track and we need to start to do permitting for a mine, we've already been out there and sponsored in the town of Diego de Almagro, which is the closest town, and I think it'll be our closest ally to get the project advanced should we get a resource and to want to build a mine down the track sometime. So it's definitely on our radar screen. We've already participated in programs out there. We're liked through the area. Then if you move up to Keo Buggy, as I mentioned, the community up there, the Aymara community, use the CopperEx example for other companies out there. They've changed everything. And we have an exceptional relationship with them. We don't even need an agreement with the Aymara community if we didn't stay in their town. Like, we can stay elsewhere, but we choose to do it to be a good neighbour. So I'm very proud of the fact, and that's one of the foundations that I want to build the company on, is establishing and maintaining good community relations out there, which we've obviously done with the Aymaras. Moving to Peru, it's going to be another story. We've been up there a few times. We tried to get in COVID. We couldn't get in because of COVID, presidential elections, national wise, and then the local community. So they've come back to us late last year asking us to start conversations again. So I don't see us doing anything any differently. And, that's why I say it's going to take a good deal of time. If we want to structure a community deal up there, which is sustainable, it's going to take us time. And I'd like to not just focus on 1 or 2 years, try and build something a little bit better, which is highly beneficial to the communities. And, we've already done some work with well-established, very reputable entities, not our community relations entities, not just with the mining companies, but with the communities themselves. So we're I won't say we're ready to go, but we've done a lot of legwork to advance the community agreement once we get the funding and the resources available to advancing other projects. So, I think that paints the picture of the communities on the 3 properties for CopperEx. We're very focused on establishing and maintaining exceptional community relations out there. And then on government, you can see the Chilean government, any government nowadays, is, you've always got issues out there on permitting and all that sort of stuff. But I think, you look at Anglo's approval out there of the Los Bronces project in 2023, I think it was, where the system's working. In any country there's mishaps. I think if you do things right and look in the mirror and sometimes critique what you do prior to submitting these and the conversations you have, like permitting requests, you can get projects across the line. The exploration permitting in Chile, for example, for 39 drill platforms for targets, you just need to advise Sonia Humin, who's the local entity out there with its said jurisdiction, and you're basically right to go and drill up to 39 platforms. You can drill multiple drill holes on that, which is much far easier than many other countries where you need to have a design drill program in there and any changes go back and modify and notify and consult. So, I think Chile's very favourable in that regard as well. So we have those permits in place for the two gold targets. That's obviously what we drilled on. So we can drill up to 39 platforms on each of those targets under the current permitting submission that we've made for those targets.
Yeah, dealing with the federal government there in Chile is always an interesting one, but of course it's more of a challenge for sure as you start to advance the project and discovery's already been made and you're going from exploration into permitting and environmental studies and these things, because we've definitely seen some challenges over the years, whether it's, there has been clean approvals, but then there's also been ones that have been dirty in terms of, Rio 2 having challenges with their project and getting that
Yeah,
finally across the finish line. And it's always just a challenge of when you look at a place like Chile, the reality is it's a mining country and mining is important for the wealth continuance of that country. What are you going to do? Turn the northern part of the country into a nature reserve? I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out for the government. This country's been so well endowed with mineral resources that it's a tremendous importance for the country. And then, of course, a tremendous exporter as well to the rest of the world and their use of minerals and all that importance. I want to just talk just briefly here, just overall strategy. I think we have a good sense based on what you said for what the strategy really is, but I'd like to have you put that into a concise couple statements here, just in terms of we know that this is working towards potential discovery. And of course, from that success, that we would probably look to have the company sold. But what are your thoughts on how you see the strategy of the company going forward with your view and, of course, under your leadership?
well, that's a great question, Andrew. I think, as I've alluded to previously on this call, we need to focus, and we do focus on Franco de Lora and build that up. I think with the second drill program out there, and successful results, showing infill drilling and also extending somewhat, I'm sure we're going to get the attention of some of the large strategics out there, which I believe we already have. I'm going to Canada. I'm currently in Colombia. I'm going to Canada on the week after next and meeting several of these entities who have been in may I say, very interested contact with us. So that's obviously one of the options out there. I see I can't believe the first time I set foot on the Exploradora property, I could not believe the potential I saw. I won't mention the number of ounces that came into my head. The potential of this Franco de Lora system and being an at-surface gold target, and we're all resources that already drilled back in 2001 and proven by 8 bottle roll tests on the ADLP target area, with recoveries out there of between 83 to 96% recovery, as filed on CEDAR in 2001 by Arizona Star, who was the All Resources being operated. I think this is an amazing target out there. And, if you have a look at some of the big mines out there, they're operating, around about a half a gram a ton, heap leach operations, maybe a little more. Some are doing even less. So if we can get 1 gram or close thereof, it's a very interesting target with potential multi-million ounce upside to it just on that target. And then, we have the porphyry targets out there, Palco non-drilled, another target great beside it. So I just see our array of strategic possibilities is extremely open. If we get success on some of those, including the gold target, we can even divide the Exploradora Norte property, keep what's best for us now. But, time will tell. I'm open to it. I don't want to say this is what we will do, because I think we have a very unique array of highly prospective targets out here right now, one which we just had a proof of concept on. So let's work on that and then, keep our options open as we move forward. But believe me, I have done a lot of groundwork with a vast array of majors, mining producing companies out there, and interest is out there. So I guess I've said enough on where I see I think I see this going.
We'll have one more opportunity to talk a little bit more about that here, is just as we wrap up. I do think it is quite interesting, and I appreciate the time here. And I wanted to finish up, again, great introduction to CopperEx here, Dave. Really appreciate you taking the time. The last question here for potential investors who are listening in. The company has a market capitalization of about 15 million Canadian dollars here. Why should CopperEx Resources be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors portfolio at this stage?
Well, Andrew, as I stated, I see copper is going through the roof, and it's taken what I see as a minimal rise over the last few months. I see it as going as much higher, and there's many professional opinions out there on it, and that's really going to be our principal focus as we move forward. But we've been lucky enough to come across or evolve this at-surface gold target to build the foundation of the company at much lower cost and risk out there for investors. So I think that, if people want copper with exposure to gold, I think this is a fabulous story out here. We're in great areas out there, I think, with no royalties out there, with the elevations we're at, and no community sovereignty over our principal property. I think that provides a good investment basis out there. Now, the upside risk and rewards, you can invest in a bank and it could go down by two. But these types of things, if you have a look what happened to Filo del Sol, I'm not saying with Filo del Sol, but you can see with a couple of good drill hits out there what could potentially happen. So that I think is the upside. It's a bet at the end of the day. As I said, I've put a lot of money into this. I'm keen on copper. I love this portfolio. So I hope that answers your question, mate. I think there's huge potential upside to this, multiples.
And Dave, best way for folks to reach out to the company?
All that information, so if you check onto our website, copperexcorp.com, all the information is on there, the contact info is there, and hopefully you'll be able to post the details I sent through to you, Andrew, of all of the contact details of the company out there to the listeners.
Well, Dave, thank you for the time and giving us an introduction to CopperEx Resources. Really appreciate it. Best of luck, and we're hoping you'll come back again in the future to update.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Great interview, and thank you to all the listeners. And any further questions, please contact us, and I look forward to any potential support out there. Thank you very much.